Thank you, listeners, for joining us. Today's edition of Elko Live features our regular update in local law enforcement news and issues. And today we're joined by our Elko City Police Chief, Tyler Trouten, is in studio with a variety of topics. And as always, welcome, Ty. Thanks for being here.
Well, thank you, Lori. Look forward to this each month. There's always lots of things to discuss, lots of things going on, and want to make sure that our community knows the issues we're facing, what's good, what's bad, and what they can do.
Well, thank you again for the time, and we do want to give a shout out to our the counterpart, your colleagues in county law enforcement and the sheriff's department. They both have some commitments that they had to. We're recording this early to accommodate, I think, your travel this week, and I know that they also both Sheriff Itor and Under Sheriff Justin Ames are attending to some other business. So we'll roll in. Obviously, a lot of these issues don't know boundaries, city-county lines, so they simply apply to what's going on in our region. So
absolutely.
So we'll first start out with some great news, because this is always an event we look forward to. It kind of signals back to school, if you will, and that's something called National Night Out.
Yeah, absolutely. So coming up here very soon, going to be August 1st this year. It's always the first Tuesday in August, which happens to be the first this year. So folks, mark your calendar. Don't get caught unawares by it. We'll be over here at the main city park from 5 to 8. This is a combined event with all of your first responders in the area. State, county, city, fire, EMS, law enforcement, you name it, everybody's there. Usually a good show. We have lots of different booths set up so you can ask questions, see the different tools that we have, the different offerings that each group provides. And of course, hot dogs and hamburgers, we cook those for the public, no charge. Good chance to come down, bring your kids. There's lots of things to keep the kids entertained. Just about every booth's got something, whether it's stickers or glow sticks or, something for the kids. So please come down. Love to see our public out here. It's usually very well attended. We'll have live music again. Just good chance to come out, and hopefully it'll be a little bit cooler by that time of the evening. Makes it better for the folks as well, but please come down and see us.
All right, that is Tuesday, August 1st from 5 to 8 p.m. in the main city park. Is that right, Chief?
That is correct.
All right, and it's a real neighbor-to-neighbor event, and as the Chief said, it's just super friendly. You can meet all these first responders, talk to them about their gear, any job openings they might have. It's a great chance to find out about different programs and opportunities at the same time. So.
Yeah, and I think it's a great opportunity too. There's a lot of times people have questions, whether it's of law enforcement or maybe fire departments. We're getting into the crux of the fire season. This is a great time to come down and ask those questions. You don't have to find a phone number and call somebody. You can come down and have a one-on-one conversation with the professionals in your community.
Very nice. Thanks, Chief Tyler Trouten, our city police chief here on our radio show today. Well, this has been a busy summer, starting out with, we've seen a lot more calls, maybe some more serious type of responses from local law enforcement and emergency responders, Chief. Yeah,
so I'll start on one of the first ones, because we're also coming into that season when we're going back to school, but traffic. We've had several very serious traffic accidents. We had another one this morning. We've had a fatality. We don't normally see these things within the city limits. They tend to be at the higher speed highways and roadways, but please just be careful out there. Double check and look. We have a lot of people on bicycles, a lot of folks on motorcycles. They're a little bit harder to see than the vehicles, the typical cars and trucks, but just pay attention to things. Make sure you obey the traffic, signs, the signals, things like that. Stop at these intersections, double check. It just really isn't worth seeing somebody injured or even killed over something like traffic.
Yeah, going too fast, especially trying to cut through that yellow light or whatever it might be, because you don't know what the other person at the intersection is doing. I know we had a pedestrian vehicle accident. It was a hit and run a couple of weeks ago.
We did, and fortunately the suspect came forward. Accident, and then of course flustered and didn't know what to do and drove home, but did the right thing ultimately. We appreciate that. Pedestrian not seriously injured. I believe did suffer pretty significant leg injury, but will recover and hopefully be able to continue with life that way. But again, be careful. Something that many people don't realize is pedestrians, they can be wearing a white shirt at night. Unless it's reflective, it just does not stand out. And of course, a lot of folks tend to wear the grays, the browns, the blacks, different things like that, and they really do not stand out. There's a lot of areas in the city where it's not fully lit as you would hope it would be, and that's just the way it is. You don't want to have a bunch of street lights around residential areas, so be careful, be observant, and again, don't be on your phone, don't be fiddling with other things, pay attention to what you're doing, just be careful.
All right, so just we have several more weeks of summer left and pleasant weather for people to be outdoors, so be extremely careful while you are out and about. And we've also had, search warrants, bomb calls, SWAT response. It seems like those things are on the uptick as well.
Yeah, it kind of comes and goes on the bomb squad side. Most of these are found explosives. One of them was in Humboldt County, basically some areas where, for whatever reason, there's some blasted caps things they find. Appears they may have been buried, so who knows what the backstory is, but again, does pose a risk. Quite commonly, too, we'll have people who pass away, the family members come in to clean out their possessions and find things that, could be quite dangerous. So a couple call-outs there. Generally, what you'll see, the bomb squad will roll out, they'll grab them, and then you'll see a notice come out either on our police app or on Facebook saying, hey, attention residents, we're going to be out West Bowie and we're going to countercharge these, so don't be alarmed if you hear a loud boom and things like that. So quite a few bomb call-outs as well as SWAT. We had a barricaded hostage situation, a male with a 2-year-old child here last Monday, successfully resolved. They were able to talk him out, take him into custody. We then had some high-risk search warrants we served pursuant to drugs and the drug trade here. The very next morning, quite early in the morning, 3 different residences hit at that time. Again, that continues to be one of the banes of our community is the drugs and the drug trade. So they've been very busy.
And that was over on South Side. That's right next door to Southside Elementary School, right, Chief?
That is correct. So, again, the drug trade, I'm sure you're quite aware, but many of our listeners may not be. It's everywhere. We've had houses where we've served search warrants up in the very nice areas. We've had them down in some of the lower economic areas. It's throughout our community, and so it always we really rely upon the community to be aware when they see things, to report, call it in. And specifics are key to this. What time is there heavy traffic? Is it every day of the week? Is it certain days? Can you get license plates or vehicle descriptions even? We generally talked about this last week at the kind of the forum for the legislative update. We know our criminals. Most of us know them by sight, know their vehicles, where they live, and who they hang out with. So if you can provide a very good description on them, we often know exactly who you're referring to and can proceed with the investigation that way. And it does take some time. The standards are very high, but we like to get those search warrants, go in there and put an end to it.
As we've talked about before, Chief, it's not a victimless crime, to be involved in the drug trade. We've had numerous deaths from overdose, for example, and plus a lot of property crime and thefts, break-ins are as a result of people seeking resources for drugs.
We have all of those things. It also plays into child abuse, child neglect, often exploitation of the elderly. Really, when these folks have the addiction, there's not much they will not do in order to gain, money or tradable goods so that they can get their next high. We've had several search warrants served by the Crime Suppression Unit this last week, recovered multiple firearms, drugs, paraphernalia, all those things, stolen property. Again, all of these things fuel that drug trade. And so, again, we've been really busy. We've had some really good success lately, but we really rely upon the public to help us in that and tell us what they're seeing and what's going on.
And you can use the non-emergency number to report to dispatch, or during business hours, you can actually speak to an officer, perhaps? Yeah,
so there's numerous ways you can do that. We have the ability now to take tips online through various resources. They still have the DOPE line, the 777 DOPE. You can call and speak with an officer. Sometimes people are reluctant to do that, but there's a multitude of ways. But if you're unsure, call. You can ask for an officer. You can have an officer call you back and, discuss with them what's the best way, I can report this. What is it you need? Those kinds of things.
Yeah, that's good that you mentioned, and then we'll kind of dip back into some of the most recent crimes or nuisances, if you will, but that there is a police app and that narcotics tip line still exists, 775-777-DOPE, D-O-P-E. It's the number you can call 24/7.
Correct.
So tell us, do you want to talk about the police app?
Absolutely. So this has been a while to get up to speed and get it completely put together and now published, but you can go to your app store on your mobile device. You can type in Elko Police Department, and you'll see the Elko Police Department police app. Very similar, in fact, same company as the sheriff's app. But it is a wealth of information. It has things from sex offenders. There's links to Vine, so if you want to know when an offender is going to be released from custody. You can see most wanted tips. We'll soon have our cold cases put up there, so unsolved homicides, information like that. There's also a means for us to push out information to the public, and I would really encourage the public to move towards this. We are not utilizing Nixle anymore. That was good for the time, but this is so much more prolific in what it can offer and what it can do for the public. All kinds of information, links to city codes, links to different things, information, whether that's about hiring, whether it's about some of the podcasts we've been doing. All those different things are on there and available. So encourage the public to get out there, type that in, download it. It is free. They do not have to pay for that app. Just a great means to stay in contact with us and know what's going on in your own community. One of the biggest complaints we get is that people don't know about things going on. We're really trying to push a lot of information out this way because it is the most effective. Obviously, we utilize traditional media such as radio and the newspaper and so forth, but there's a lot of our generation does not pay attention to any of those things. So we really need them to get onto this app, and that way they can see what's going on and what are the issues in their own specific neighborhoods.
I have it right in front of me, so it's easy on your mobile device. The icon is, there's a American flag, there's a badge over it, so it's got a blue background. You've got news and press releases. You can file a report online with this. Sex offenders are listed here, the most wanted, the missing persons cold cases, the safe voice connection. And then there's also a place for commendations and complaints if somebody wants to say, hey, thank you for that response, or hey, I have a concern.
Absolutely. We try to be very transparent. We want that information to come in, both good and bad. Like everybody else, we're all human. There's mistakes made, but we can't overcome those mistakes unless we know about them. So encourage the public to please get that app and use it and provide us feedback on it as well.
I know I've got one from the sheriff's office, as you said, as well as even from the Winnemucca Police Department. So a lot of agencies, large and small, are going to this type of outreach.
Yes, correct. And kind of the move is to move away from traditional things such as like Facebook or Twitter. You will see links on there, but this is a much easier app to use and much more specific. If you're on Facebook, you may have to scroll down several posts to see what it is you want to find. Here, it's by category. You can search it and find it and have it in seconds.
All right. Talking to our city police chief, Tyler Trouten, here on Elko Live today. And backing up just a little bit into some of the ongoing instances the city's been responding to. You had a couple of pretty big arrests. There were some weapons involved. I saw some child abuse in there, drugs of 2 people taken into custody on Monday from the Elko Inn at 8th and Idaho Streets.
So this has been a continuing issue for us over the summer. We've made several arrests, served several search warrants there. I know the city is working diligently to try to get the owners to cooperate with the city and address not just some of the, I guess, more traditional issues such as, garbage being stacked up, the business not having water services, things like that. But really right now it's almost a den of just some of our more well-known subjects, some of our criminals and so forth. Again, sawed-off shotguns, serial numbers obliterated, drugs, all kinds of things going on there. And unfortunately, there's a lot of residents in that area that also have been victimized, whether it's the stealing of utilities, water, electricity, break-ins, thefts, different things like that. We don't need that in our community, and really trying to get the owners to step forward and just cooperate with us and run a clean, orderly establishment. So that fight continues. If you are paying attention to the council agendas, you'll see more and more of these topics coming up here in the next couple months.
Yeah, that's good to know. It is a process when you do have to. You have to follow city code and laws about whether they're squatters or whether a property should be condemned. But you go through the city attorney, and the owners, we should mention, are not local; they're out of state.
That is correct. And the big thing too, I always encourage people be involved. It's always easy to vent your frustrations and so forth, but there's ways, and this is really where it comes down to being a citizen. Come to city council, voice your displeasure and your concerns, and make sure that they're aware of it and hearing it from them. I think sometimes my concerns may be mitigated a bit just because we always have concerns. We see all the crimes and different things going on, so it's always good to have the public involved in things. We've seen that with the concerns over ball fields. We've different things over the years. really pays to have the public get involved and come down there and say their piece.
All right. So whether it's a concern in your neighborhood or your concern for your neighbors, it's always nice to come down and help support this effort. So as you said, the Elko Inn situation should be on the next agenda or two. And I know we'll update that on Tuesday. We have a program featuring city news in the agenda every Tuesday here on Elko Live. So thank you, Chief. In the meantime, it's probably best to just kind of avoid the area too, right? Because this kind of stuff is going on 24/7.
Well, I would say avoid the area, but that's kind of hard. It's right in the middle of downtown Elko, essentially. It's right off of Idaho Street. But really what I'd encourage people, and this doesn't matter what area of the city you're in or the county or anything else, always be aware of what's going on. We continue to have people come through trying to perform various scams. Again, just recently, the folks at the gas station, hey, I'll sell you this jewelry on the cheap. It's worth thousands. I just need some cash for fuel. It is a scam. We know we have these groups that they travel throughout the cities and throughout the state and in different areas, and they repeatedly do this and oftentimes go unpunished because nobody thinks to get the license plate or get the driver's license or, hey, let me call an officer over here right now just to witness it. I would bet you that as soon as you mention having an officer show up, they're going to be getting in their car and driving away because they know what they're doing. So always be aware and be alert. We've talked before about always being alert and aware of your surroundings, the people, the different things they're doing. It's that time of the year when there's a lot of people coming and going from our city, non-residents coming through the area and different things. It's hard to tell who these people are. We don't know anything about them. So just be careful.
And that leads us into another topic that was brought up during the legislative update that you described, hosted by Elko County GOP, and that is the issue of human trafficking. And I guess there's some disagreement about whether or not it's happening here or could be happening here. So I'll let you speak to the issue, Chief.
So, yeah, the sheriff had kind of a different perspective on it. And again, that's really dependent upon what cases come to your knowledge. Human trafficking is a very hard thing to detect. By its very nature, they coerce people and restrict their movements so they can't go running to the police. They don't have the availability of having their own cell phone or, having the means to just walk over to the police station or something like that. They're controlled in everything that they do. They are literally slaves. And that's what we should be hearing when you hear the word human trafficking. It's human slavery. They use a multitude of different means to coerce these people into doing what they want. It may be threats to family members. It could be threats to them. It could be that there's some perceived debt that, hey, we're able to get you into this country and now you owe us and you're going to do these things. And I would encourage people to research it. As I said at the forum, you can go to the Polaris Project. That's one of the forerunners, but there's also, hotlines with, you can go to their website. They have information available. It's not just sex trafficking. That's one element of many. As I said, it could be, at your favorite restaurant. You see these folks, you don't know what their circumstances are. You don't know how controlled they are. They, just because they're not wearing shackles and chains and, so forth, doesn't mean that they are not a victim of this. Unfortunately, over the years, we've had instances come to our awareness of people who've been trafficked. Some of them have been successful on, some of them we learn about too far after the fact, and they're already been moved on to another area, and we don't even know where that is. And, that's a horrible thing. They talk about, there's more people in slavery today than there were during the height of what we traditionally think of as slavery. This requires, again, the public to be aware of it, what it looks like. If they have those concerns, we need the public to call in and let us know.
So, Chief, it begs the question, we have legalized prostitution in city limits and even in the county. So your thoughts or comments on that?
So that is obviously a very ripe area to expect things like human trafficking. We've started initiatives a couple years ago now where every single new sex worker that comes into town to get their license, we pull them aside one-on-one. We have an investigator come meet with them and talk with them in the language of their native language, use translation services, but try to determine things like, do they have freedom of movement? Can they go see a doctor if they need to see a doctor? Can they communicate with their family? Is there anybody holding, them captive by duress? Things like that, for the sole purpose that, if it is going on, we want to catch it now. If that is the case, they're not going back out the front door. They're immediately going into protection. So we are set up to handle these things. Greatest fear is that we certainly don't want to have that, under the appearance of being condoned within our community. It's already a very, very tightly controlled industry here within the area. This is just one more facet of that.
So, Chief, has there been anything that has raised red flags? We know that in the past, if a sex worker was asked to appear before council, it was she, but she would be accompanied by management, right? There'd be two men standing on either side of her. Do they get to participate in these interviews one-on-one?
No, absolutely not. So I guess if you think of it and kind of what you're characterizing would be a handler, somebody to keep tabs on them. No, they are not part of that meeting. So if this person they're taken aside, there's no visual contact, no audio contact. The handler, if we use that term, is left in the lobby, or whoever brings them down from management. That potential sex worker is taken aside, and like I said, if they say yes on these, they're out a different door, and that's the end of it. They're not going back to that person. They will have no further contact with them. So, like I said, it's always the concern. But again, the sex trafficking side, that's one point of many that we deal with in human trafficking.
Well, in fact, it's been something that has been discussed locally, Chief, I think with everybody, and everybody that's in law enforcement administration. At least this is the perspective expressed publicly, is that you would rather have this type of scenario. It is easier to monitor and control. There are restrictions. I mean, is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, that's a very fair assessment. And there's been several studies done on the international level looking at what is safer for the sex workers themselves. If you have illegal prostitution, which everybody does, it's always going to occur. They joke about it being, the oldest or second oldest profession. Well, that's true. What you see in areas where it's not legalized is you don't know who your sex workers are unless you catch them in the act. We see a higher incidence of juveniles, of runaways being involved in those, higher incidence of drug use, of violence against the sex workers themselves. So at least this way we know who they are and can work on that. And then obviously we still have some of the illegal that occurs here, often quite closely associated with the drug trades. But it has time and time again showed itself to be safer for the sex workers, and again, easier to find somebody if they are being trafficked and get them out of that situation.
Yeah, we could probably spend a whole half an hour just talking about the mechanism, because, to have a house of prostitution, a licensed legal brothel, you have to pay for a license from the city of Elko, and it's a very privileged business in that sense.
Well, and there's a very thorough background that occurs. We, especially on the financial side, to see who is backing this. Is this an organized crime, backing?
Money laundering.
Exactly. There's a host of issues that go with it. So do our utmost in that background to see who these people are, what is it they're about, who are their associates, how are they affiliated, things like this. Far from ideal, and quite frankly, it can be quite distasteful. However, what is better? And like I said, it has worked well over the years. We've denied licenses to several individuals because of their connections, different things. So we keep quite the close eye on that.
Talking with our Police Chief Tyler Trouten here on Elko Live today. And as always, if people do suspect something, say something, right? Even if you're in a grocery store, a common place to encounter someone who's been trafficked might be even a restroom at a truck stop if you're traveling.
Yeah, I just seen an article this morning too, a young juvenile female able to get a sign and hold it up, come to the notice of an officer, and sure enough, she was in the process of essentially being kidnapped. I'm sure for this very purpose we're talking about. So again, it's incumbent upon the public, pay attention. We always talk about things that just don't look right. Call us, let us find out. If it is copacetic, if it is okay, great. No harm, no foul. But if it's not, it may make a significant difference for that individual.
And Chief, we do know that of all the topics we discuss, the hardest is how children are abused and included in some of these crimes. And that's why we have now the Great Basin Child Advocacy Center. And I think the doors are about to open, right, Chief?
We're getting very close. Everybody is very antsy, very excited to have this open. Of course, the benefit is it's a one-stop shop. So they can get everything from the medical exams, the social services they need, the behavioral health resources there for them as well as make the criminal report on these things. The other big benefit is it's not associated with any law enforcement entity per se. So at the Child Advocacy Center, all of your local area law enforcement will have personnel there ready to take the report if it's in their jurisdiction and to assist in the investigation that way. But heretofore, most of these investigations have happened over at the police department because we do have interview rooms set up for it and so forth. The problem is, at the same time, you have a lot of other people coming in, including sex offenders who are updating their registration or registering. And, it's also open to the public. So you're sitting in the lobby, waiting while your child's interviewed or something, and in come your neighbors and friends and business. It's just not ideal. So very excited to see that open the doors. Hopefully, I'm thinking it's about mid-August is what they're looking for. I know they're wrapping up the construction, they're getting the furniture put together, everything. And I did have a tour the other day, and I will tell you, it has been set up phenomenally. Kudos to everybody involved, especially our district attorney, Tyler Ingram. Very well thought out, very well planned, got room for growth, all these things. So, and again, really came in thanks to their efforts and the donations from like the Pennington Foundation, some of these other groups that have been part and parcel of this. Just kind of astounded. I did not think I would see that in my career as a law enforcement officer.
Well, it does take good leadership and then to bring everybody along. And I think the hardest part, Ty, was convincing people that we had such a need. And then, boy, do we have such a need. So,
yeah. I would say that, and, you know, again, always encourage, and we have ride-alongs available. But I've said it many times, Elko is a good area. We are head and shoulders above, you know, your big rural urban or big urban areas and some of these things. But we have the same crimes here, and there are a lot of bad crimes that do occur. And people are just oblivious until it affects them personally.
Mm-hmm. Well, Chief, that brings us to a topic, too, of which you were able to discuss quite a few changes. You're still sorting through mounds of information as a result of the legislative session. Unfortunately, a lot of one-size-fits-all laws are passed. They may be well-intentioned. They may fit in Clark County or in our urban areas, but they're rather difficult and seem sort of punitive in rural communities.
Yeah, they can be difficult. This legislative session was not nearly as harmful to law enforcement as some of the previous ones in the special sessions. There were some good things that came out, allowing us to arrest domestic batterers up to 7 days after the act is committed, different things like that. We did start to see some increase in protections for elderly folks or people who are disabled, but there were several bills proposed along those veins that didn't get traction. As I said at the forum, and I'll reiterate again, we really, really need people to stand up and be citizens. We need them to do their civic duty, pay attention to these bills, not after the session's closed, while it's going on, beforehand. Talk to your legislators, get to know them. If you have friends in other areas, get them involved. We know that here in the rurals, it's pretty hard to get any clout because we don't have a lot of representatives in the legislature. But get a hold of folks. Most of the legislatures on either side of the political lines, they're not unreasonable people, but they need to know what the problems are and what's going on. So those things, again, always encourage people to do that. Some of the other good laws that will help us, catalytic converter thefts, which is happening in our area. Mail theft. We've had numerous instances over the years where people go and hit the cluster boxes and steal mail and so forth. Now we have that as a state crime, so that's a very positive thing. If people have been paying attention to news, they've seen these kind of roadway takeovers where people will do like drag racing and burnouts and different things. They call them street takeovers. We now have that added down onto our reckless driving clause, and now if you get stopped and cited for reckless driving, we can also just tow your vehicle. Even though you're not impaired and otherwise I guess would be presumed safe to drive away, we can just have your vehicle towed so you have a little more time to think as you walk back home about why you shouldn't be doing that. So some of those things are really good. They did add fentanyl in. However, the trafficking levels on that are still so significantly high. I really wish those would be lower. We are seeing overdoses every single day. Yes, we have Narcan. Yes, most of these folks are able to be saved, but many are not. And again, especially with the younger kids and so forth, they take these pills. They really don't have the maturity of thought to know what it is they're taking or how dangerous it could be. And it can happen quite quickly. It wasn't, I think about 2 years ago, we had a 14-year-old that did a single pill, snorted it, and did not survive. It can happen that quick. So we really need some very strong laws to push this and really push back against it and hold people accountable that are selling this stuff and trading it. Some of the drugs we just recovered made to look like candy, made to look like cereal. They're purposely trying to go after kids because, again, if you can addict them at a young age, you got many years of them coming back and buying those drugs from you. So that should be one that the state is really hammering down on. I wish we could have got some stronger, language in that bill. Other good things for those that, want to see the best police and sheriff's deputies and so forth. Nevada now, we've always been kind of on the forefront of the National Decertification Index, but now it is against state law. So If they've been decertified in any other state or any agency within the state and lost their post certificate, they cannot be law enforcement. So that is good. Again, we've talked about the extensive process we go through to make sure we get the very best people. It's not a perfect process. You can still have people who get through that process and get hired. So this is another way to make sure that once we're done with them, they don't ever get back into law enforcement anywhere.
And that is important to know. There are very high standards in the Sheriff's Department as well as in Elko Police Department, and you do often have openings, and you're really trying to recruit the best people.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've had another good year. We've hired 5 different sworn officers this year. The majority of them are laterals. We have one who's in the academy right now, who's brand new to law enforcement, but a military veteran as well. What we really strive for is, first and foremost, getting people who have integrity. Secondly, people who have a very strong desire and can convince us that they really are committed to this community, to helping the community, to keeping it good, to making it better, those kinds of things. If they don't have that desire, if that's not why they want to get into this profession, we're not interested in them.
Thanks for the update there. I want to make sure we got through all the law enforcement legislation, the impacts, before we switch gears and get ready to close out today's program, Chief.
Yeah, there's, like I said, there's a multitude of laws. Still windrowing through them. Some of them are very convoluted in their language, but for the most part, good things. So.
That is good. That's a positive update. I don't know if there was anything that the governor vetoed in particular that you'd want to mention that did impact law enforcement, with him having been sheriff of Clark County. So.
Yeah, there's a couple. So I think most people are aware now. A couple years ago, they changed most traffic offenses to a civil penalty rather than criminal. One of the penalties under the civil side was that if you didn't pay that civil fine, you would lose your driver's license. There was a law this go-around where they wanted to do away with that penalty. So essentially the only penalties would be is that, they're going to turn your collections over to an agency, you're going to get some phone calls wanting you to pay that, but there was really no other penalty. To me, that is that there has to be some penalties. Even California, if you don't pay that, it still goes to a warrant and you can be arrested on it. There has to be teeth in that. We don't issue citations all that much. We do it when we're just trying to get people to listen to us and obey the law. Most people get a warning. If you're one of those folks who just doesn't seem to be understanding, or you're contrary and you don't want to slow down, or stop at the signs, whatever, you'll get that citation. There has to be a penalty. It's about trying to change that behavior, and that requires, if you don't get it with the carrot, then you're going to have to understand there is a stick on the backside, and you're going to have to, change your behavior. So removing the penalties, that's not a good one. The other one would be, they were talking about restricting when cops could stop vehicles on some of these minor traffic violations. Things like having a tail light or, a brake light out, or not having headlights, or, different things like that, suspended registrations or expired registrations. Those are key on a couple fronts. Most folks I know, even with our mining community, where they're pretty good about doing walk-arounds on their work equipment, they aren't doing that same walk-around on their private vehicles. Many people don't know they have brake lights burned out, or tail lights that aren't working, or headlights that are out. There's even people who forget that, hey, you got to renew that registration, things like that.
Or put the sticker on. That's me, yeah.
The other side of that is, we also know that a lot of our folks that are involved in the drug trade and all these other crimes we've discussed today, they're often driving vehicles that are not roadworthy, that aren't licensed, that have fictitious plates, different things like that. And that is one of the means we use to get them stopped and get into the cars. We recover a lot of drugs, a lot of stolen property, a lot of firearms from traffic stops with our known criminal element. And that's one of the avenues in there. And I think one of the things that people are naive about is, we're not stopping people for 5 miles over, even though that's probably one of the most prevalent citations issued. That's because the trooper or the deputy or the officer is being nice, and instead of citing you for 20 miles an hour, the speed limit, they give you 5 over and cut you a little break, even though they are citing you. So just trying to educate some of our legislators and educate the public on this. This is, again, vetoed, but they're going to be back up in the next session, 2 years, and there's a fair chance that they'll pass at that time, and the governor's veto will be overridden. So we, again, need the public to come forward, do their civic duty, get involved, and help us out on this.
Thanks, Chief. And we'll be talking about that as we go and just reminding people to step up, as you said. I guess in closing, we just would mention that we're weeks away from back to school with, I think, school starting the 28th. And our school resource officers are such an important part of safety and well-being and mental health. I think, sadly, we've had another suicide of a young person, haven't we, Chief?
Yeah, this continues to be a problem and plague us. The schools are doing better. There's actually some good legislation coming out as well, both for providing resources as well as making this a topic to talk about. I do find it interesting, the pushback against sex ed years ago as well. If you teach them it, they'll do it and stuff. So now if we see the same argument. Well, if you talk about suicide, they'll do it. Face the facts. It's happening right now. We need to talk about it. It needs to be discussed. It shouldn't be a taboo. Let's talk about it. Let's help them, get them to resources and overcome it rather than wait for the unthinkable to happen.
And we're going to be led in these efforts, right, from Lieutenant Bribiesca. Anna, she just earned some credentials too, didn't she?
Yeah, so she just completed her master's. She's well-versed in these things when it comes to the social work side. We also have a lot of social resources in the school. Lynette Vega has done a very good job of pushing on this and trying to get the school district to offer resources and be able to talk about it and discuss it, educate the teachers on what to look for. And again, it comes down to that. If you see something, say something.
Okay.
There's quite a few resources. We'd
Including
love to have
Safe
more.
Voice, right?
Correct. Safe
Yes.
Voice is another resource. We have quite a few. I still wish we had more in the area. I will not be satisfied till we have some serious inpatient facilities here in Elko that are up and functioning, and even triage centers. So people have some choices about how to get help and can get help very quickly, not be put on a waiting list or things like that.
Thanks again, Chief Tyler Trouten, our Elko City Police Chief, for the update. So we always look forward to our conversations, and we appreciate our listeners for joining us today. Thank you so much, Chief. I hope we got to all your topics.
We did. Appreciate it, Lori. And just to the public out there, please continue to stay safe.
Yep, and we'll see everybody at National Night Out on Tuesday, August 1st.